Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Urban Yogi TV. Today we are talking about vitamin B12 and why it's probably one of the most misunderstood vitamins that exist. My name is Rukmini Bantala and I'm the founder of urbanyogi.ug. Now, B12 is something that people think is a vegan problem, but in reality, it's actually an entire humanity problem. In fact, it's not just a humanity problem, but it's also an animal problem. Did you know that cats and dogs also get B12 shots today? Literally anybody can have a B12 deficiency. It's a vitamin that's actually found in the soil. It's synthesized by microorganisms in the soil. So when animals are eating grass and the soil, they're getting this vitamin from it. And eventually this vitamin actually gets stored in the liver and various muscles of the animals. That's why people say you can only get it from meat. But in fact, B12 can also be found in fruits and vegetables, although they would have to be wild and grown in rich soil. It's also a flora that is produced in our intestines. So guess what? Our body actually produces it. Now let's look at what is the function or role that B12 actually plays in our body, because it really does play many roles. But let's look at some of the main ones. The first thing is that it's really important or helpful, especially in the energy production cycle, by helping us form something called nucleic acid, which are then used as the foundations for red and white blood cells. So basically what you need to get out of this is that it's really important in energy production. It's also important for the replenishment of myelin sheaths, which are basically the outer covering for your nervous system. It's also important in protein metabolism, as well as supporting and helping you in repairing DNA. So these are just a few of them, but of course the roles are really many. B12 is actually a vitamin that can get stored in your body for anywhere between 7 to 10 years before you actually start to see any deficiency. So deficiency is not something that kind of happens overnight. But why is it that it's become such a deficiency or common deficiency in today's world? We used to have huge amounts of B12 in the olden days because we used to drink water out of streams and also forage for our food in nutritious soil in the wild, which we kind of don't do anymore. B12 deficiency also comes because of a result of low stomach acid, because you need to have a really acidic stomach to be able to absorb the B12, and low stomach acid is an issue that's very common in today's world. Certain types of medication also are responsible for depleting the B12 reserves really fast. So if you think of medicines such as anti-seizure medications or chemotherapy, or the common one, metformin, which is pretty much used in insulin resistance and diabetes, or how about even the proton pump inhibitors, which are used for reducing the stomach acid, right? And in fact, even antibiotics and any type of cholesterol lowering medications have been found to really deplete your B12 levels super fast. So now let's look at what needs to happen in the body to be able to absorb B12, because we did talk about one of them, which was the fact that you need to have an acidic stomach. So what happens is that B12 binds to specific proteins and then enters our body. So if you have poor stomach acid, that's the first point of damage, right? It's not able to break down the proteins, which means you cannot then absorb the B12 well. The second thing, if your stomach acid is good and it has broken it down, then the stomach actually produces something called R protein, which helps which is what's needed for the B12 to bind to it and then taken into the small intestine. So if the stomach is not producing R protein, that's the second level of damage. But if everything has gone well till there, then it goes into the small intestine, and then this R protein that was created actually binds to something called intrinsic factor, which then enables the B12 to be released into a free form and absorbed. So if you have problems in either the stomach acid production or the R protein or the intrinsic factor, all of these things really impact your B12 problem. So, the fact that you don't have B12. Studies have actually shown that about 2/5 of Americans suffer from a B12 deficiency. And the interesting thing is, half of the people were actually vegans, but the other half were not vegans. So although deficiency in today's world is a real problem, it's not a vegan problem. So there are some more reasons why you might see a decrease in B12, especially today. The first one is age. Because again, with age comes the weakening of your digestive function, which can hinder the absorption and processing of the B12. And studies have also shown this, that a third of the people over the age of 65 tend to have a B12 deficiency because of a low stomach acid problem. The other reason is that if you have any type of digestive issues like irritable bowel syndrome, celiac disease, or Crohn's disease, again, these can impair your ability to absorb B12 properly. The third reason is also gastrointestinal surgeries. If you've had gastric bypass surgery or any of those type of surgeries, again, you're at a high risk for having a deficiency of B12. And the final one is also the type of infections such as H. pylori, which are very common, especially if you're eating meat. If you're not, then it's very hard for you to get that infection. The next thing we need to look at are the symptoms of a B12 deficiency, because once you realize that you are having these symptoms and you have a B12 and it's as a result of B12 deficiency, then you're able to do something about it. So the first one is extreme fatigue, irritability, or feeling run down. So all of these things could be sign of a B12 deficiency. If you're struggling also with infertility or memory problems, depression, muscle cramps, bleeding gums, or slow reflexes, all of those things could also have something to do with B12, and it's just worth checking it out. A few other things are pale skin, neurological problems such as multiple sclerosis or peripheral neuropathy. There's also a type of anemia associated with it called pernicious anemia. In fact, even cancer has been linked to a B12 deficiency. So if you have any of these issues, it's really worth checking it out, because with so many systems relying on B12 deficiency is really not good to have, right? So it's really important to get tested regularly and make sure your reserves are doing fine. And I think I'm going to do another video to help you understand more about the testing and supplementation for B12, so that you have a better idea in terms of how you need to get checked and what you need to do. So keep an eye out for that. So that's like overall simple overview of B12. If you like the video, please go ahead and give us a thumbs up or subscribe to our link, and share it with other people so that they can start to recognize what the symptoms they're facing could be as a result of B12 deficiency. And watch out for the next video. Enjoy.